This is an overdue breakdown of how I think Beyoncé studied her past work, which in this case would be Beyoncé's self-titled album, and incorporated it into this 3-act project. Because if you pay attention, a lot of things in Cowboy Carter and Renaissance relates to her Beyoncé self-titled album, and I broke some of it down in the Did Beyoncé Warn Us About the Return of Sasha Fierce, which was another theory I covered before discovering this one. I also will add it at the end of this video. And not only that, but Beyoncé saying that she studies her past work and incorporates it in her future work while also trying to improve it every time. But before we get started, check out our Amazon storefront for Cowboy Carter tour outfit inspo, as well as other Beyoncé finds linked in the description.
I'm competitive really with myself.
Right.
Honestly. Like every time I start an album, I go and watch all of my performances and I try to figure out, okay, what is it that I could have done better or what worked? And really my references, I go back to myself and try to better myself. So I'm really tough on me.
First, I want to cover that I had questions about her in this camera era, but then I ended up finding evidence to support why I think she is using this camera in this era, and that is another theory for another day. But what I will add is, since Renaissance was advanced technology themed, then this Cowboy Carter era represents before technology was even advanced as it is now, or better yet, before it was even invented. Evidence being the newspaper, the camera, the horses, being transportation back then, cigars, the theme being black and white, and etc. And that only makes me wonder what theme Act 3 will be. But being on the topic of cameras, I wanted to point out that at the beginning of the Cowboy Carter lyric video, you can see this old film countdown, but if you really pay attention, it's identical to the countdown at the beginning of the Haunted music video. And if you listen to both, you can also hear that the noise sounds are also identical to each other. Which told me that Beyoncé absolutely took inspiration from her past work. And I also wanted to add that if Cowboy Carter was put out before Renaissance, that she would have been teasing what the Renaissance staged would have looked like in that same intro before we would have even known, on top of her teasing Been Country, which was the theme of her Beyoncé Bowl performance in the beginning of that intro as well. But now let's break down the entire Haunted music video and how I think it could relate to this 3-acts trilogy, but most of all, how it relates to Act 3. Now, at the end of our Beyoncé x Sasha video, we talked about what she did with the cigarette in her Haunted visual and how she recreated that in her Bodyguard teaser. And we also talked about how the font she used in that announcement video favors the same font on the luggage in the Haunted video as well. But you can also notice that the Beyoncé Bowl font also favors the font of her full name at the beginning of the Haunted video as well. Now, after the countdown at the beginning of the Haunted video, it jumps to this glitchy static screen like a TV would do, which matched the sound that you heard during the countdown. But this only reminded me of the screen Beyoncé had at her Renaissance tour, which also represented the color bar screen on a TV, and it only shows up when video signal is weak or disrupted. And in my opinion, her using the color bar screen to advocate for the LGBTQ+ community was genius because it correlates and makes sense. But all throughout the Haunted music video, there are multiple TVs being shown in different rooms, and putting all of this together shows that she's a student of her own work, and going to this room, it gives gothic. And also pay attention to the paintings in each room, because to me they give Renaissance paintings, which are paintings that are realistic and detailed, often depicting people and nature in dynamic poses, which were influenced by the rediscovery of classical art and culture. And while we're on the Renaissance, I wanted to add that the Renaissance was a period in European history when there was a revival of art, literature, and learning, adding that the word Renaissance is French for rebirth. So to me, her starting out this trilogy with the Renaissance era, it set the tone for the history she is trying to make and take back. But I also wanted to add that when we did our font breakdown in that same video, every font we researched was European styled, including this black Takora font, which is close to the Beyoncé Bowl font, which I found by mistake. But getting back to the Haunted video, we already talked about the beginning when Beyoncé walked in the mansion, but now let's get get to her walking down the hallway, and each room she passes, like this room where there's a few men playing cards, it reminds me of Texas Hold'em, a song on her Cowboy Carter album. And if you really watch the video, you can see the scenes cut to TVs and cameras, which are either showing or watching Beyoncé. But if you look at this scene, you will also notice the type of shoes this woman is wearing. And I felt that those shoes remind me of something, which was these shoes Beyoncé wore last year. And I'm not really going through the whole video. I'm just going to cover what I think correlates to this 3-acts trilogy. But this next scene I had to cover because it's a little too revealing. But if you go look at it yourself, you would see stars somewhere. We know that the theme of this act has been stars. And not only that, but I also noticed that the rhinestone paint bucket also reminded me of something, which was this picture of Beyoncé with a rhinestone hand in red. And even this scene where that same lady is sitting on the TV reminded me of Renaissance, on top of me saying that this top she had on in that Netflix teaser was Renaissance coded to me as well. In this clip, you can also see the fan, which was something Beyoncé also used in the Renaissance era. And going into this clip, you probably can't see it, but on this patient's hat, you can see that it says Most Wanted on it. And what I will say is that it correlates to two different things, in my opinion. One being that her having a song on Cowboy Carter named 2 Most Wanted, and the other I will have to include in another video I have in mind, since it goes with a whole different theory. But what I also wanted to add was that if you go down Beyoncé's Instagram to December 13th, 2023, which was 3 months before Cowboy Carter dropped as well, you can also see that Beyoncé posted this video on the 10-year anniversary of Beyoncé's self-titled album. So to me, that was another hint towards her today's work topping what she did in that era. Also adding that in the self-titled documentary, she talked about how she rolled out self-titled. And in one of our videos about the visuals, I talked about how I think she's going to roll the visuals out, which is the same way she did with the self-titled album, by dropping them as a surprise drop or a surprise visual album all in one.
You know, because she's making an album, you know, every song has a video and they're all being released at the same time. So is this something, you know, that she talked to you about?
You know, to be honest, this is the first I hear of this.
Like an animal with these stems all in my grill. Flashing lights, flashing lights.
Then I also wanted to add that I feel like she took inspiration from Pretty Hurts by using the sash in Cowboy Carter, and it's crazy that the word sash is close to Sasha, like as in Sasha Fierce, and that brings me back to Haunted, where this woman is on a mechanical bull, but instead of a bull, it was a horse covered in black paint. And while we're on the topic of mechanical bulls, it also makes me wonder if she'll include a mechanical bull in the Cowboy Carter tour, because she also mentioned it in Sweet Honey Buckin'.
Bucking like a mechanical bull.
But the horse reminded me of the Cowboy Carter horse transitioning into a black horse, which we broke down in the Look at That Horse breakdown video, which should pop up at the top for you to check out. But I also talked about how the era transitioning from white to black relates to Beyoncé transitioning into Sasha Fierce. But this Cowboy Carter era is also a golden era, because you can see a lot of what Beyoncé is wearing in this era is gold, and that relates to this part of the video because of her gold boots. Then this was one part I forgot to add, but if you watch Haunted in slow motion, you can catch a lot more things in that video, because I also noticed that this girl in black glitched to this lady in white, and that also reminded me of my Beyoncé versus Sasha Fierce theory, especially the cover with white and black, and at the end she looks in the mirror and the reflection is the same. But with that being said, I have a separate theory that goes along with this, so subscribe to catch all of our breakdowns.